Trauma. The word carries weight, sounds personal and unique, like something that belongs specifically to you. The therapeutic industry tells you it's something broken inside that needs healing, processing, or integration. Therapists, coaches, self help gurus want to help you find your inner child, or authentic self, or whatever else supposedly needs excavating. I bought into this for years and did all the work, the digging, crying, journaling, meditations, trying to fix what they told me was broken. But the trauma didn't vanish. It just shapeshifted like trying to patch a hole in a bucket that's actually part of a larger systemic leak. You patch one spot, another appears, or the old one starts dripping again. If you think I have no idea what I'm talking about, you're wrong. I spent a massive amount of money on therapy, went through more than a dozen therapists. Some of them held back tears when they heard my story. I had depression and chronic anxiety for most of my life, couldn't stand up for myself, kept getting into toxic relationships, and genuinely believed I was hopelessly broken. Here's what I finally understood. Modern psychology tells us trauma is a wound on the psyche, that the soul can be broken, that childhood events damage you so you will never be the same. This is a lie. I'm not talking about immediate psychological responses to extreme events like war or assault. Those are real nervous system reactions. I'm talking about what they call childhood trauma or complex PTSD, the kind of damage supposedly done by abuse, criticism, neglect, emotional manipulations. The everyday wounds that supposedly shape who we are. The concept of trauma as a psychological wound is not an objective truth, but a constructed narrative that emerged from 19th century neurology, was legitimized through military psychiatry, and later absorbed into psychoanalytic and therapeutic frameworks to individualize systemic harm. What began with Charcot's theatrical treatment of hysterical women and evolved through wartime attempts to preserve soldierly honor eventually became a lucrative industry that pathologizes normal responses to abuse, repression, and alienation. By framing suffering as an internal dysfunction requiring endless healing, the trauma narrative diverts attention from the structural origins of pain and neutralizes resistance by making individuals responsible for their own oppression. It persists because it keeps people occupied within a paradigm that prevents them from seeing architecture of control, not because it reveals any truth. Your true self cannot be damaged because it's not material. It's not a social role or behavioral pattern, but the actual dynamics of consciousness, a living flow. How can you damage a river? You can force it to flow in a different channel, throw stones into it, dam it up, but the water remains water. Your true self is the same living entity. It can be redirected but not destroyed or damaged. What we call trauma is actually a program installation. It's a moment when the system loads a controlling algorithm into consciousness through a vulnerability point. When your natural resonance with yourself breaks, creating a gap, anything can enter. Think of trauma as an open port in your system. When subjective continuity falters, foreign constructs that would normally be rejected can suddenly embed. If in childhood you were beaten and humiliated, you begin perceiving the world as dangerous where you are nobody. But it's not your true self that changed. The system installed a fear program. If you were constantly criticized, you grow up feeling like a failure. But this isn't your real sense of worth. It's just loaded code. If you were abandoned or neglected, you might develop compulsive attachment patterns, but that's also just installed programming. What you think of as your trauma is actually an implanted algorithm running on repeat. Post-trauma, you don't perceive yourself through your natural core resonance anymore. You perceive yourself through a repeating pattern of thoughts, images, sensations that feel like yours, but were installed during vulnerability. You don't recall the event. You replay the program. And here's the thing. All these programs are identical. Criticized as a child, you'll develop feelings of worthlessness. Ignored, fear of abandonment. Controlled, inability to stand up for yourself. It's like a virus that produces the same symptoms regardless of the host. If trauma were real personal damage, the responses would be unique and unpredictable. But they're not. They follow the exact same patterns, like standardized code running the same operations. Even psychology books catalog these predictable sequences, which proves we're looking at systematic programming, not individual wounds. The longer this runs, the stronger the illusion that this is me. The trauma-triggered script self-replicates because the parasite has made its structure the only one that feels alive. You repeat because no other resonance is accessible anymore. This is why years of trauma work keeps people stuck. They are treating the implanted algorithm as sacred, missing that the altar got swapped. They think they can work through anxiety, then work on feeling worthless, then childhood trauma, then attachment issues or compulsive people pleasing. But all these are inseparable parts of one program. You can't remove one element because the system immediately builds a new one in its place. It's like having a virus on your computer and trying to delete files one by one without touching the code that launches it. The system will restart the virus. You got rid of fear of poverty? Here's the fear of loneliness. Removed guilt? Welcome to the fear of judgment. As long as the main mechanism works, it can rebuild endlessly. The system loves this because if you're busy constantly processing the same wound, you're not seeing what actually happened, the installation of control code through your moment of vulnerability. People processing the same trauma for years stay stuck because they treat it as authenticity's proof, missing the swapped altar. My own traumas didn't get processed. They just dissolved when I finally saw them for what they were. Not authentic expressions of my core, but outdated signals from an irrelevant layer. The intensity of trauma doesn't make it true. Its duration doesn't make it vital. It only shows where a breach occurred and how long the parasite held control. There's actually a biological reason why these programs stick so hard. Scientists have discovered that certain brain cells called astrocytes basically act like your brain's system administrators. They filter which mental pathways stay strong and which ones get weaker. The problem is they prioritize whatever you use most, not what's actually good for you. So if you've been running fear and self-doubt for years, that's the infrastructure they keep reinforcing. It's like having a road crew that only fixes the roads you drive on most, even if those roads lead nowhere good. But here's what I discovered from my own experience. If you give these astrocytes a more coherent, logically consistent paradigm to work with, they can completely restructure themselves and stop reproducing the glitchy viral code. They're not actually loyal to the trauma program. They just maintain whatever system seems most stable. Show them something that makes more sense, and they'll rebuild the whole network. That's why you can't remove the program piece by piece. You're either in it or not. Awareness of the system cannot be gradual. It's always abrupt. Until you see it, you're inside. Once you've seen it, there's no way back. The moment you see the entire system for what it is, it loses its power over you. The program can only function while it remains invisible. Once fully exposed, it simply stops running. The task isn't to heal pain, but to restore your pre-implant configuration. It's reclaiming a state where you weren't foreign code's object. You're not the one who remembers trauma. You're the one who can start resonating naturally again. When the program disappears, you return to yourself. You don't become different, you just stop being controlled. And at this moment, you realize you were never broken. Nothing was stolen. You have always been yourself, you just didn't know it. Your true self cannot be destroyed, it can only be entangled in foreign programs. And if these programs no longer work, all that remains is you. If this seems too simple, well, that's usually how it is. That's what I call a dialectical deconstruction of hegemonic paradigmatic frameworks through post-structuralist methodological triangulation.